Mr. Chair, we're connected live stream. We can commence. So we've called the meeting to order at 1:59 and all members are present except Mr. Greco, our fifth member, is attending on Zoom. And you're there, Joe, just to say here, thank you. Staff on hand is myself and John Kirkell, planner with Planning Office. And we'll begin our meeting with a land acknowledgement. I acknowledge with respect that we're in Robinson Huron Treaty Territory, that the land on which we are gathered is the traditional territory of the Anishinaabe known as Bawatang. Bawatang is the home of Garden River First Nation, Batchewana First Nation, and the historic Sault Ste. Marie Métis Council. Just to stray a little bit from our usual agenda, anyone that's been to the committee in the past 30 years will notice that one of our former members isn't here, and that's Mr. Art Galatsi. It's my privilege to honor Arthur Sonny Galatsi, or Art as I called him, a friend, colleague, husband, father, nono, and son. In whatever role you knew him, he stood out as a genuinely kind individual, a loving husband, father, a man of prayer, and a treasured friend. Energy, commitment, integrity, charming, one whose glass was always at least half full, are some of the qualities that I describe Art. First appointed to the committee in 1992, he continued to serve as a member and often chair from 1992 until his recent passing in December of 2022. I will personally miss our weekly conversations, which always ended with, "I'm here if you need anything, kid. God bless you and your family." Similar sentiments were conveyed to many of you in these chambers after each meeting. Simple words, I know, but Art meant them. While we mourn the loss of our colleague, I'm sure each of you joins me in celebrating a life that was well lived and our good fortune to have known him and called him friend. Salute, Art. Mr. Chair, if you could move to, if anyone has any other comments they'd like to make.
Jack Moore to folks that I kind of mentored after I was able to take leadership from Mr. Galatsi. His commitment to the CCC rings all in person, and as community adjustment member and other committees I'm sure he sat on, will always be missed. Very friendly, kind-hearted individual. And we have my father and play hockey with him. I hope that you're all having the rest in total peace.
Thank you.
Michelle, I don't think Mr. Chair's microphone is on.
Thank you, Joe. Okay, seeing no others, we'll move on to our business agenda, Mr. Chair. And to begin with, I'd like to advise that member Mr. Joseph Greco has disclosed a pecuniary interest in tab 5. That would be It Sue Holdings Inc., Civic number 2 and 6 St. Thomas Street, 766 and 784 Bay Street. Mr. Chair, member Greco, pecuniary interest is he and a proponent of It Holdings are in current litigation. So moving on to our next matter on our agenda is approval of the minutes of the hearing of November 23rd. And if I could have a motion for that, Mr. Chair.
I'll move, Mr. Chair.
Second.
I'll second.
All in favor?
Joe, did he?
Yes,
Thank you.
Yeah.
Mr. Chair, I've had no requests for withdrawal or deferral of an application, so we'll move on to the first application on our agenda, which is application A123, Curtis McLeod, Lucas McLeod, and J. Maureen McLeod. And Mr. McLeod, Curtis McLeod, is in the gallery to answer any questions that you might have. The subject property is known as 70 Cottage Lane. It is located on the south side of Cottage Lane and abuts St. Mary's River. It is designated rural area in the official plan and is zoned R1 estate residential. In accordance with section 45(2)A of the Planning Act, the applicant requests that the committee authorize a minor variance to permit an extension to an existing legal non-conforming, non-complying building wherein the existing structure does not conform with the provisions of zoning bylaw 2005-150, but has legally been in continuous existence before and following the date of the bylaw was passed in October 25th of 2005. By permitting the construction of a 123.29 square meter addition to the easterly side of the existing structure, approximately 2.4 meters from the rear lot line. The intent of the application is to assist in the conversion of the existing seasonal residence to a year-round residence. Notice of public hearing was sent by personal mail to neighboring properties and by posting a sign on site. Is there anyone else in the gallery besides the McLeods that are here to speak to this application? Seeing none, I'll report none. No other written comments were come in from neighboring property owners either. As part of the application review, this proposal was circulated to internal departments and external agencies for their review, and there were no comments or concerns raised that would preclude this application from moving forward. The following circulated departments, divisions, or agencies had no comment and/or no objections to the application: Building, Planning, Engineering, Legal, PUC, Fire Services, Algoma Public Health, and Sault Ste. Marie Region Conservation Authority. Bell Canada right-of-way did not respond. Building staff advised that a building permit will be required and all work must comply with the Ontario Building Code. PUC Distribution Inc., the electrical utility proponent, advised that the existing service is fed from a private pole on the adjacent property. The proposed addition will require a service size review. If infrastructure revisions are required, easements with the adjacent property owner must be obtained. Sault Ste. Marie Region Conservation Authority advised that the subject property is in an area under the jurisdiction of the Conservation Authority with regard to Ontario Regulation 17606, development interference with wetlands and alterations to shoreline and water courses. Any development on the subject property will require a permit from the Conservation Authority. For the committee's consideration, there's no objections to the request and no evidence was presented to suggest that any negative impact would result from approval of the application. Recommendations are approval to be conditional on a service review being carried out by PUC Distribution Inc. and any conditions that may result from their review being satisfied prior to the issuance of a building permit for the proposed addition. And those are my submissions, Mr. Chair. And again, Curtis McLeod is in the gallery.
Mr. McLeod, do you have any further comments? If you'd like to add what Michelle was reading to the record?
I've already had the conservation report.
Okay. Thank you, sir. Nothing further?
PUC will get reviewed.
Okay.
We're not going to do that because I think it's on the neighborhood property, but the pole is on the eastern side.
Members, any questions for Mr. McLeod?
I don't think I have any questions.
No questions from me, Mr. Chair.
I'll put forth a motion with the conditions.
Thank you.
Easy.
I'll second.
All in favor?
I'm in favor.
Great.
Thank you. The next matter on our agenda is application A223. It's an application from 100222063 Ontario Inc. They're the owners of 77 Ruth Street. David Topin and Steve Topin are here in the gallery to answer any questions you might have. The property is located on the easterly dead end of Ruth Street between Second Line West and Estelle Street. It is designated residential in the official plan and is zoned R3 S418, low density residential with a special exception. In accordance with sections 45(1) or 2 of the Planning Act as applies, relief is requested from the provisions of bylaw 2005-150 as amended to include an 8-unit single-story apartment building, in addition to those uses permitted in an R3 zone, specifically section 9.7.1 of bylaw 2005-150. The proposed variance again is to include an 8-unit, single-story apartment building as a permitted use for the subject property only. Public response, notice of public hearing was sent by personal mail to neighboring properties and by posting a sign on site. Is there anyone in the gallery that wishes to speak to this application other than Messrs. Topan? As part of the application review, this proposal was circulated to internal departments and external agencies for their review, and there were no comments or concerns raised that would preclude this application from moving forward. The following circulated departments, divisions, agencies had no comment and or no objection to this application: Planning, Engineering, Legal, PUC, Fire Services, Public Works, Accessibility Committee, and Sault Ste. Marie Region Conservation Authority. Planning Division advised that the subject property is zoned low-density residential or R3 zone, which permits multiple attached buildings but not apartments. The main feature that makes the proposed building classified as an apartment is the presence of a common corridor hallway. Beyond this, the building would function more like a multi-attached building due to being one story and having private amenity space for each unit accessible through a patio door. Planning staff have no objection to this application. Engineering staff advise that there is an existing easement and grows for plow turnaround within this property. Further development should proceed in consultation with appropriate city departments. Stormwater management is required for property with 4 or more units. PUC Distribution Inc. had no comment on this variance. It is recommended the developer contact PUC as soon as possible to discuss the timeline of construction and details of the electrical service requirements for the property. PUC Public Utilities Commission, and that would be the water utility, has no comment on this variance. It is recommended that the owner contact PUC Engineering to discuss the timeline of construction and details of water servicing requirements for the development. Public Works and Engineering Services support the application with the condition that consideration be given to city vehicle turnaround on the property. The accessibility coordinator advised that accessibility requirements will be examined as part of the building permit application process for compliance with accessibility under the OBC, as well as any applicable areas under the Integrated Accessibility Standards Regulations Design of Public Spaces Standard. Sault Ste. Marie Region Conservation Authority advised that the subject property is not located in an area under their jurisdiction. For the committee to consider, there's no evidence of any objection to the request. Staff recommends that further development proceed in consultation with appropriate city departments and reminded the applicant that stormwater management is required with 4 or more units. Both PUC Distribution Inc. and Public Utilities Commission recommended that the developer contact them as soon as they are able to discuss the timeline for electrical and water servicing of the property. Public Works recommends that approval be conditional upon the provision of an approved city vehicle turnaround on the property. And those are my submissions, Mr. Chair. And again, Mr. David Topin and Mr. Steve Topin are in the gallery.
I'm sure open. Comments? This is actually.
Oh, well, there you go. I said that when I came down to talk to you too. Oh, well.
I had a question, Mr. Chair. I don't know if,
Yes. Joe, or do you have a
Yes.
question?
yeah, okay, so it's low density R3 zoning, correct? No,
Yes,
How many units are going into the complex?
it's an 8-unit.
8 unit? And it's just one corridor that allows access through somehow through a hallway?
Yes, and 1 story.
Okay. That's all.
Mr. Chair, would you ask them to speak to the snowplow turnaround?
Oh, sure.
Yep.
Would you speak to the snowplow turnaround? Yeah, we're dealing with.
So you understand that the committee would put it as a condition? Okay, thanks.
Questions? Next application.
I don't have any questions.
Other questions?
I'll make a motion, Mr. Chair, with those conditions that have been written for in the by the city departments.
Thank you, Joseph. Motion by Mr. Greco, and second by Mr. Franklin, all in favor? Carried. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you. No. Just so everybody, I'm sorry, I should have announced this earlier. If the committee finishes with your application, you're free to leave. You can stay with us for the rest of the afternoon, but you can also leave if you like. Okay, so moving on to tab 3 of your agenda. And that would be an application from Alex and Melody Zalewski, application A323. The subject property is 177 Roosevelt Avenue, and there's no representative in attendance. Mr. Zalewski couldn't get away from work. The subject property is located on the west side of Roosevelt Avenue between North Eden and Whitney Avenue. It is designated residential in the official plan and is zoned R2 single unit residential. In accordance with section 45(1) or 2 of the Planning Act as applies, relief is requested from the provisions of bylaw 2005-150 as amended to legitimize the height of the recently constructed detached garage. Specifically, section 9.1.5 requires a maximum building height of 6 meters. The applicant seeks to increase that building height to 6.3 meters. Notice of public hearing was sent by personal mail to neighboring properties and by posting a sign on site, and I know there's nobody in the gallery to speak to it. As part of the application review, it was reviewed by outside departments, divisions, and agencies, and there were no objections to the application. Building, planning, engineering, legal, PUC services, and conservation authority responded and had no objections. Bell Canada right-of-way did not respond. The conservation authority advised that it was not in an area under their jurisdiction. Considerations for the committee, there's no objections to the request and no evidence has been presented to suggest that any negative impact would result from approval of the application. And those are my submissions. Oh, yeah, no, I'm good.
Looks pretty straightforward.
I'll make a motion to approve the variance.
All in favor?
Favor.
Thank you. Member Greco, we'll now close your mic
Okay.
and I presume you'll look away.
I'll turn, yes, I'll do that.
Having declared a pecuniary interest in this next matter on our agenda being application. Let me just get here. We'll move to B2. No, he isn't. B2 23, application from Itcan Sioux Holdings. We note that Mr. Greco is not present for the consideration of this application. And we'll note that Mr. Bishalia is attending by Zoom as representative for Itcan Sioux Holdings. The subject property is Civic number 2 and 6 St. Thomas Street, closed St. Thomas Street, 766 Bay Street and 784 Bay Street respectively. The property is irregular in shape with frontages on Queen Street East and Bay Street. It is designated commercial in the official plan and is zone C2 central commercial. The applicant is seeking the committee's consent to sever the subject property into 3 lots. 2 lots will front on Bay Street and the 3rd lot will front on Queen Street East. The lot configuration to be as follows. 1 lot fronting on Bay Street being 45.25 meters of frontage and approximately 0.238 hectares in size. The other fronting on Bay Street being approximately 35.90 meters of frontage and approximately 0.270 hectares in size. The 3rd lot having a frontage of approximately 28.649 meters on Queen Street East and being approximately 0.217 hectares in size. The intent of the application is to provide autonomous title to each lot for future development and redevelopment purposes. Notice of public hearing was sent by personal mail to neighboring properties by posting a sign on site and posting on the city website. There's no one in the gallery as a result of those notices to speak to the application. As part of the application review, this proposal was circulated to internal departments and external agencies for their review. Planning, engineering, legal, fire services, public works, PUC services, Bell Canada right-of-way, and Sault Ste. Marie Conservation Authority had no objections. Building did not respond. Engineering staff advised that an easement is required for the municipal storm sewer over this property. This property was the subject of a recent drainage complaint. Drainage and past issues will be reviewed as part of any future development approval process. Public Works advised that sewer servicing easements must be provided for one property over the other if necessary. PUC Distribution, Inc., being the electrical utility, advised that all existing easements shall remain. They recommended that Civic number 766 Bay Street obtain an easement from 784 Bay Street for the electrical service infrastructure of duct banks, cable, and transformer. Public Utilities Commission, being the water utility, advised that there is an abandoned water main located within the former St. Thomas Street right-of-way, located within proposed Part 1 and Part 2. A release waiver is required in form satisfactory to PUC. Bell Canada right-of-way has determined that Bell Canada requires a 3-meter wide easement to be measured 1.5 meters on either side of our buried and aerial facilities as can be accommodated. The approximate location of our facilities has been highlighted in red on a screenshot that they provided. Since the easement is required in order to provide and sustain service, all costs associated with this transaction will be the responsibility of the owner. Compensation is to be set at a nominal amount of $2 for the acquisition of these easement rights. Bell Canada also requires separate registered postponements for any mortgages and certification of title. The Mr. Bichelia, who represents this application, has been in significant dialogue with Bell Canada, and he will speak to this matter in a minute. Considerations for the committee are: no evidence has been presented that suggests that approval would create a negative impact. Conditions to be applied but not limited to at this point are provision of registered survey, payment of certificate fee, payment of cash in lieu of parkland, provision of applicable transfer documents, discharging or partial discharge of charge or mortgage, payment of municipal taxes, compliance with zoning bylaw provisions, provision of storm sewer easement, provision of an easement between 766 Bay and 784 Bay for the electrical infrastructure, provision of a release waiver for the abandoned water main. Storm sewer servicing easements must be provided where necessary to the satisfaction of the Director of Engineering and Director of Public Works. And I'll let Mr. Bichelia now speak to the matter about the Bell telephone and what type of condition we'll need to attach on that. Mr. Bichelia?
Yes, thank you very much to the chair and members of the committee. We received a letter from Bell Canada, and I believe that is probably part of your material. And they gave us a sketch with 3 red lines on it. The difficulty is that we have no idea where the Bell telephone lines are. And so it's very difficult for us to determine at this time, A, the legal description for that easement, B, for a surveyor to put that on the draft 1R plan that came with this application. I found out yesterday after I recommended to Bell Canada that they should contact Mr. Urso, our surveyor who made the draft plan for your consideration, and have Mr. Urso meet with their locator to find out exactly where the lines are that service this property. Part of the difficulty is that this is a piece of land assembly. There are a number of small single-family homes on Thomas Street. It was part of a car dealership years ago. And so there may be lines there that are not going to be necessary. May have been necessary at one time when it was a bit of a subdivision, but not now with the 3 properties. So the surveyor is to meet with the locator, find out where the lines are, and see what lines are necessary that will service the dental building that's there located, and obviously the real estate office that's there. We need those lines to be in there. The only question is where are they going to be located, or where are they located, that we can define them in a 1R plan. So I communicated with Bell, and I confirmed with Miss Mary McCartney that I did not want to hold up this application, and that we would ask for approval of the request made, and the matter of the easement location and servicing of the properties by Bell be permitted to occur to mutually satisfactory conditions for both Bell and the property owners. And so we're going to be working on that after we leave this meeting, hopefully with the approval of the division of this property in 3 lots. And with respect to the PUC and the city sewers, that's not a problem. PUC and city have registered easements on the property, and we have no problem dealing with them at all.
So, Mr.
Any questions, if you have any?
You have any questions?
Other than I understand that Mr. Shea, you want to amend the final condition to be mutual satisfactory between the applicant and Bell, where the condition now says it's the satisfaction of just Bell and, is that correct?
I'm sorry, I'm having some difficulty in hearing the chair with all due respect.
He's not aware of that. Mr. Chair, I have the following suggestion for a condition for the committee's consideration. The owner applicant and Bell Canada right of way resolve the issue of an easement to their mutual satisfaction prior to final consent. Are you okay with that, Mr. Bishalia?
Yes, I am.
No, that answered my question. Yeah. I'll put forth a motion with the conditions of, yeah, everything listed.
Second five. Frank Rooney, all in favor? Gary Joseph?
Oh, no, he's pecuniary. He's not here.
Oh, here.
Carried. Thank you. And Jonathan, can you have him rejoin?
Thank you very much. I'm assuming I'm free to leave now, the meeting?
Yes, you can.
Thank you.
Enjoy the sun.
Thank you.
Okay. Joe, have you rejoined us?
Yes.
Thank you. Okay, if I can bring your attention to item 4 on your agenda. And that would be an application from Roslyn Ennis, application number B123. Mr. Urso is in the gallery as agent on the application. The subject property is 20 Colson Avenue. The property is located on the east side of Colson Avenue, approximately 45 meters north of its intersection with Queen Street East. It is designated residential in the official plan and is zoned R2 single unit detached residential. The applicant is seeking the committee's consent to sever a southerly triangular shaped portion of the subject property, having a frontage of 1.524 meters approximately on Colson Avenue, an approximate area of 612.7 square meters, and attach it to southerly abutting property as a lot addition. Notice of public hearing was sent by personal mail to neighboring properties by posting a sign on site and posting on the city website, and there's no one else in the gallery here to speak to the application. As part of the application review, this proposal was circulated to internal departments and external agencies for their review. Building, planning, legal, fire services, PUC, Public Works, and Bell Canada right-of-way had no comments or objections. For the committee's consideration, there were no objections to the request. Conditions to be applied to but not limited to any approval are provision of a registered survey plan, payment of certificate fee, provision of applicable transfer documents, discharge or partial discharge of charge or mortgage, payment of municipal taxes in compliance with zoning bylaw provisions. And those are my submissions, Mr. Chair. And if the committee has any questions, Mr. Urso is here to answer them.
No, as always, Michelle has described the situation succinctly. And it's the driveway that we're talking about has existed for some period of time. Serves as a garage for the Queen Street property that comes off of Colson Avenue. And due to the relief between Queen Street and that particular area, that's how the issue was created. But both parties want to resolve it so that they can move forward with ownership. And so here we are.
No, I think what Mr. Urso said helped to clarify what was going on.
I'll make a motion to approve.
I'll second with to put the conditions. Yeah.
All in favor?
I'm in favor, Mr. Chair.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay, so bringing you to not quite the last one, Mr. Lepore, but just a quick one. Item tab 6 on your agenda, that would be application B 323, Jesse James Bailey Carter, 1935 baseline. The property is located on the south side of Baseline between Town Line and Airport Road. It's approximately 0.4 hectares in size. The subject property is designated rural in the official plan and zone rural area. In accordance with Planning Act, Section 45, an owner of land that was previously conveyed with an unstipulated consent may apply for a certificate of cancellation of consent only to permit a lot addition to a previously consented to parcel. Notice to other parties or commenting agencies is not required, so this matter was not circulated to anyone else but the committee. The applicant is seeking the committee's consent to a certificate of cancellation for an unstipulated granted consent, being application B 2292, which created the parcel known as 1935 Baseline. The intent of the application is to permit the westerly abutting parcel described as pin 31516-0148 lot land titles being part 1 of 1R 3610 to merge with the easterly abutting property being pin 316160123 land titles. That is a lot addition. Mr. Bailey owns both parcels and was under the understanding when he purchased them that they would automatically merge. Of course, they didn't because of the consent. Notice of public hearing is not required for a cancellation of consent. No circulation is required. Again, consent approval was given in 1992 to create the subject property. He recently discovered that those provisions, by registering them in common title, do not apply to a property that was created by consent or through a plan of subdivision. Since the intent represents lot addition purposes, approval of this request will allow the two properties to physically merge. There are no appeal provisions permitted on a cancellation of consent either. And those are my submissions, Mr. Chair.
Thank you, Michelle.
This isn't my application. I'm
No,
just,
He's
yeah,
just waiting. He's next.
I'm just patiently waiting.
Yeah.
Committee members.
Question, what is the advantage of doing this with drawing a previous?
So that it can attach. Once a consent is always a consent, you can't attach. It's like Teflon.
Right.
So if you wanted to add to your property that had a consent, you couldn't do it. So before you used to have to change the shape of the lot.
Right.
Well, now in January, new provisions came in place that you can cancel that consent for lot addition purposes only. So he would like both so that he can use the entire property in his development. Otherwise, it's two independent
Oh,
properties.
okay, now I
Yeah.
got it. Thank you.
Committee members, any questions of Michelle? Comments of the report? You're starting the motion, policy.
Or the motion.
Mr. Rooney, seconded by.
I'll second.
Wayne Greco, Clark first, Joe, all in favor?
All in favor?
Thank you.
Now number 7.
And now, Mr. Lepore.
I'm not going to take any offense as to where this application was on the list.
It fell in how they were submitted. Okay, this is application B 423. The owner is Robert Andrew Dale of 235. He owns 235 River Road. And again, Mr. Lepore, as solicitor, is representing him on this application. The property is L-shaped and is approximately 1.698 hectares in size. It is designated residential in the official plan and is zoned R2 single detached residential with special exception S223, which permits the existing hangar. The applicant is seeking the committee's consent to sever a southerly parcel fronting on River Road. The proposed lot configuration to be as follows. Severed parcel would be approximately 30.48 meters by 149.96 meters, or 4,570.78 meters square, or 0.45 hectares in size. The retained land is about 80.78 meters of frontage on River Road and 149.96 meters in depth and approximately 1.21 hectares in size. The intent of the application is to create one additional parcel for future residential development purposes. Notice of public hearing was sent by personal mail to neighboring properties by posting a sign on site and posting on the city website. While it generated a significant number of calls to my office, I see there's no one in the gallery that wishes to speak to it from the public. As part of the application review, this proposal was circulated to internal departments and external agencies for their review. Building, planning, engineering, legal, fire services, public works, PUC services, Bell Canada right-of-way, and the Sault Ste. Marie Conservation Authority had no objections. Building recommended that any approval be conditional on finalizing permit 2022-1863, demolition and removal of 2 buildings. They noted that the property has been designated a brownfield site due to previous issues on the property. Engineering staff advised that there are existing sanitary services to 235 and 243 River Road. PUC Distribution Electrical Utility had no concerns with the proposed severance. As discussed with the previous owner, PUC will be removing the overhead electrical service on Civic number 243 River Road. Public Utilities Commission, being the water utility, advised that their records indicate that the existing Civic 235 is not serviced with municipal water. However, the adjacent lot, being 243, is serviced and may be providing water to Civic 235. Easements may be required between the 2 property owners. Dedicated water services are required. Share services are not permitted. The owner must contact PUC Engineering to clarify the existing servicing arrangement. Any unpaid frontage and servicing charges will be due at the current rates at the time of connection. Sault Ste. Marie Region Conservation Authority advised that any development on the subject property will require a site plan review and may require a permit from the Conservation Authority. Considerations: there's no evidence has been presented that suggests any approval would create a negative impact. Historically, 235 River Road and 243 River Road were 2 autonomous lots held under different title. The current owner of 235 River Road subsequently took title to 243 River Road in common ownership as a result. Planning Act regulations caused the 2 properties to merge. Approval of this application restores the autonomous nature of the property as 2 lots, albeit slightly different configuration, and Mr. Lepore will speak to that. Conditions to be applied but not limited to any approval are provision of registered survey plan, payment of certificate fee, provision of applicable transfer documents, discharge or partial discharge of charge or mortgage, payment of municipal taxes, compliance with zoning bylaw provisions, satisfying PUC commission with regard to water servicing, etc., and finalizing of permit 202-1863, demolition and removal of 2 buildings. And those are my submissions, Mr. Chair.
Thank you, Michelle. Now, Mr. Lepore, any comments?
Thank you, Mr. Chair, and thank you, Michelle, for that succinct summary. Regarding the PUC matters raised, my client's aware of them. I believe the overhead power line has already been removed. If not, it's being in the process of doing so. The water service will likely be an independent service, and my client will know to contact PUC to deal with that. In terms of the configuration, initially there was, and there currently is, this property is made up of 2 zones, an R4 and I believe an R2 and an R3, an R2 rather, with a special exception. And so the property at 235 River Road is an L-shape, actually originally was an L-shaped property that extended from the road towards the water, and then the L-shape carried on along the water. Those properties merged after its common ownership with the R4 piece of 435 River Road. At 243 River Road. And so there were always 2 lots here until that common ownership. We're only creating 2 lots again. And my submission would be to, typically there's a 5% cash in lieu of parkland levy that's charged, but that's for the creation of a new lot. We're not doing that here. And therefore I would submit that that levy is not applicable and the committee should dispense with that requirement.
Mr. Chair, would you like me to speak to that?
Yes.
I would have to agree with Mr. Lepore. The cash and lieu provisions in the Planning Act are for new lot creation, not specific to new lot configuration. It's new lot creation. Technically, this is 2 parcels. Through inadvertence, if they merged, we're only going to have 2 parcels at the end of the day. If we were having a 3rd parcel, the cash and lieu would be applicable, but we don't. We have 2 parcels to begin with and 2 parcels at the end of the day. So I would submit that cash and lieu would not be required, and as such, it was not in my suggested conditions.
Any questions for Mr. Lepore? Michelle, address that.
Just have one question. The, based on the building comment, it's designated as a brownfield. What does that play into all of this?
When whoever goes to apply for a permit, depending on what they are applying for a permit for, additional studies may come in due to the fact that it's a brownfield site.
Okay, so there's no condition pertaining. right
There's
at
no
the moment.
condition that we have to, it's just an advisement to the applicant.
And I might add that the applicant is aware of that.
I'll make the motion subject to conditions and discussion about the vibration.
Second the motion, Mr. Chair.
Thank you, Mr. Joseph Greco. All in favor?
I'm in favor.
Carried. Thank you, Mr. Lepore.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
That concludes the